Hello, welcome to our live coverage of the 2017 Sailing Champions League final. We're at one of the world's most famous and exclusive sailing clubs, the Yacht Club Costa Smeralda on Sardinia's northwest coast. One of the world's most famous and exclusive.
Hello fellow, welcome to the Champions League Day 1. Welcome to the beautiful Sardinia, to the Costa Smeralda, and look how nice it is here.
And it is a beautiful place, nestling on the Emerald Coast, the Costa Smeralda on the northwest corner of Sardinia, in the heart of the Mediterranean Sea. A stunning backdrop then, and excellent conditions for the climax of the Champions League season. We're about to watch the best clubs in Europe do battle for the title. 32 teams from 14 countries are here, including the Austrians who won in St. Moritz, the all-female crew from the Royal Danish Yacht Club, and sitting beside me to crunch all the SAP sailing data coming off the water is Corky Rhodes. Can't believe they let you into the club.
I know, feeling pretty lucky to be here, and spectacular conditions. Yeah, we're due to see some pretty fantastic racing out on the water today.
Yep, twinkling under the Mediterranean sun. It is an absolutely gorgeous sight, and we'll be getting out there for our next race very, very soon indeed. But we did have some racing yesterday, and we've had got a few under our belts as well this morning. So let's bring you right up to date with the overall leaderboard. The local club, Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, who we haven't seen in competition because they get a wild card as the host club. We haven't seen them competing yet in the Champions League. Well, we've been missing out on some quite spectacular sailing from them, and they've certainly thrown down the gauntlet here in their home waters. So Yacht Club Costa Smeralda currently leading, although they've had a little bit of a wobble this morning with that 6th place finish. Then come the Germans from Lindauer Segler Club. The Swiss from Geneva are in 3rd place, and Lord of the Sail, the Russians, currently leading fellow Russians, Ostlegal Sailing, in 4th and 5th. But some real strength and depth in those crews, and it's going to be fascinating to see how this final unfolds over the next couple of days. Well, glorious weather today for spectators. We've talked about the sunshine, and it is looking great. Southeasterly winds coming in. There are the details, about 27 degrees. A little bit light at the moment, increasing through the afternoon, though, eventually reaching 7 to 10 knots. What are the on-water conditions like here in Sardinia?
Well, it's pretty different to what we've seen at the last couple of acts. So very different setups, racing on the river at St. Petersburg and then the lake in St. Moritz, and now to the actual coastal waters here. It's going to be a very different situation with the way the water moves. The difference, the thermal conduction will happen with the breeze, and this is what we're looking to see, and we're seeing some nice sort of breeze out on the water now, and that could strengthen again with the temperatures we're seeing. So a unique sailing venue and very different to the last. So the people that got into their stride over the last couple of acts certainly are going to have to see how they pace themselves on the water today.
12 flights planned for today. We've had 5, and we will be live on the water for the start of Flight 6 in a few minutes' time. We've mentioned the Italians currently in the lead, the local team. Who else do you think we should keep an eye out for?
Well, there's been some pretty strong performances, certainly within the last couple of acts, with Norddeutsche Regatta Wein struggling to find a little bit of consistency and pace here in these lighter conditions on this sea state. But winners in St. Petersburg, certainly ones to keep an eye on, and with plenty more racing to go, anything can happen. One team that you've mentioned already, Lord of the Sail from Russia, they're really starting to put in some consistent results. And again, we're seeing them fighting it out in those top spots. But a team that weren't really expecting necessarily to be at the front of the fleet, and have really surprised everyone with that settlement into that breeze. And so another one to keep an eye out. And certainly the Austrian team, Seagull Club Matzi, winners of St. Moritz as well, and they're starting to find a little bit of form again, but been quite interesting. Those dominant performances we expected to see really starting to struggle in these lighter conditions, and we're seeing a strong, certainly, performance at the moment from the home favourites, but also, as we've mentioned, the Swiss team from Geneva as well. They're putting in a strong performance in these conditions.
So we're looking at the committee boat, the blue pennant at the top with the red diamond at its centre, the flag of the yacht club Costa Smeralda, the home yacht club. And we're awaiting the start of Flight 6. And, you know, there's an immense amount of experience on these boats. But it's also great to see a real variety in ages.
Very much so. It's fantastic, and this is what's such a great platform for this, to enable these sailors to come in and race at all ranges of ability. But certainly a team we've mentioned, Seagull Club Matzi, the Austrian team, a real sort of fine group of young sailors there. The helm, Stefan Snagel, is 21 years old. And that shows that actually performing against some of those real big hitters. And one of those is from Russia, St. Petersburg Yacht Club. Anna, the actual helm, is an Olympic 470 and Yingling sailor. So huge experience and knowledge being passed on to some of these young sailors. And but it shows how exciting what these young sailors have got as a hope moving forward in future races.
We were looking at the landscape of this particular part of the Sardinian coast. It's still very much summer here, about well, temperatures in the mid 20s. Feels warmer out of the wind, to be honest. It's absolutely beautiful. It's the tail end of their summer tourist season, and there's a really wonderful kind of lazy, slow pace at the moment to the island as the summer season draws to a close. But they're really eking out every possible day of sunshine. People still enjoying the beaches and all the amazing water sports that are available here. And talking of that, I mean, this yacht club, is fair to say, is up there with only a handful of the world's top yacht clubs.
Very much so. It's a spectacular venue, and many sailors enjoy coming here for a host of events. And there's certainly their calendar as it looks through the actual year is an action-packed one with multiple sailors from all different levels, sizes of boats.
I mean, they have the super yacht regatta here, don't they? They have the Maxes. I mean, any event worth its salt is tries to be hosted by this yacht club.
Very much so. And as I say, what you can see from the pictures now is the breeze that these sailors have got, anywhere between up to 10, 11 knots that we're starting to read now. So getting into the higher end of what we expect to see today, but glorious conditions, and why every single sailor would love to be here. So
let's talk about the SAP analytics. We've got trackers on every boat. We've got trackers where you can't move for trackers, and all that stuff, all that information is coming into us. So tell us where we're at now on the water with this next race.
So coming into this next race, it is going to be the start of Flight 6. So with the breeze that we've got, is going to be about, at the moment, sitting from that south-eastern direction as we were talking about, but actually more up to about 10 to 11 knots out on the water. So, of course, these guys are going to be sailing around, and this is a standardized course. It's a windward-leeward course, so out of the start line, back down, and where an opportunity for them to split is the gate leeward mark, return back up to the windward mark, and then a straight run through to a finish. So quite a simple course, but certainly with these asymmetric boats, plenty of opportunity for overtaking.
We've got a start time yet on this next race? About 3 minutes to go. So a perfect opportunity to just run through the runners and riders with you. Each boat, if you're new to the Champions League, I should explain that we've got 8 boats out there, 4 crew on each boat. Each boat has a colour, and the teams are all sailing the same 8 boats. So at the end of each race, off goes one crew, on comes another, and away they go for the next race. So we've got here in the pre-start and confirmation in the bottom right hand corner of the screen that we've got just under 3 minutes to go. I can tell you in the light blue boat, which is boat number 8, we will have St. Petersburg Yacht Club, the wild cards entry at St. Petersburg, who impressed so much with their young sailors. So they're in boat number 8 with the light blue sail. At the other end, boat number 1, that's got the dark blue sail, the dark blue spinnaker. That will have Yacht Club Bregenz of Austria on board. The red boat, boat number 2, the French team of Club Voile Saint-Quentin from near Paris. Boat 3, Hellerup Sail Club of Denmark. We've seen them in impressive form in previous Champions Leagues. They're in the yellow boat. The green boat, that's boat number 4. That's a team from Finland, the Nylanska Yacht Club from Finland. Boat number 5 with the pink sail is Lord of the Sail. They're from Russia. And so far have had a pretty impressive time here in Sardinia in the opening races. Boat number 6 is that boat you can see just the other side of the rib, the purple boat. Boat number 6 is Ost Legal Sailing of Russia. And finally, boat number 7, Deutsche Touring Yacht Club of Germany. So those are our 8 contenders with 1 minute and 20 seconds to go. Corky, what are they trying to do right now?
So it's all about positioning, trying to get themselves teed up on the start line to enable the best execution off the start line. They need clear air, they need speed to get away from that line and away from the other boats. And generally what a lot of sailors are doing is looking where they want to be 30 seconds to a minute after that start line. Where they are they in the right position to enable their strategy they planned out? If they're not, then they're already starting to play catch up and are trying to add in extra maneuvers which can slow the boat and try and jostle through. But certainly as we come down to 45 seconds to go to this start, it's looking like there's a nice pin end bias, and looking at the analytics, there's a good couple of meters bias at that end, meaning the buoy the furthest away from us is going to be where we're going to see most of these boats want to jostle.
So there you can see from our drone footage, the start line is from this catamaran closest to us, across the course, away from us, where that red buoy is sitting sort of middle of the screen. That is the start line. With 13 seconds to go, they are heading that way. They want to hit that as close to 0 as possible. And right now at the far end, that looks like the best starters. And it's the pink boat, boat number 6, that are away. We'll wait for confirmation to see if that was a clean start. From our angle, it certainly looked to be. So a good start from Lord of the Sail of Russia. They're away first on boat number 6. Close behind them, Club Voile Saint-Quentin of France on boat number 2. And already some of the, 2 boats already have decided a quick manoeuvre is called for.
Yeah, so we saw a couple of boats pushing early up towards that pin end, having to jibe out, either being over that line or jibing out due to dirty air. So we see boat number 6 ducking behind the rest of the boats. Looking at the breeze and the analytics that I've got in front of me, this mid-track that they're actually sailing, taking this wind shift that's just clocked round and favouring this port tack, which we see boat number 6 coming across on in good breeze. So we've got plenty of good distance out here, but the fleet all charging out towards that left-hand side.
Let's have another look at that start then. Talk us through this, because it was a good one from the Russians.
So they just nailed that pin end. They managed to hold their position, come out with good speed just holding their position against the French team, just up above them there. We're looking at the lead 2 boats. As we can see, the boat in the middle there peeling out, whether they believe that we can see them dip behind the line. So they clearly think there was they might have been up onto that line early and re-engaged. But you can see the distance from this view, how much they drop back behind the back of the fleet.
Yeah, Yacht Club Bregenz of Austria performing that penalty turn. But as we stand, it's a Russian 1-3 with the French team from Saint-Quentin in second place. But it's pretty close. And as we've learnt in the earlier acts of the Champions League, the first leg is not the time to try and call a winner of the race, because anything can happen, and it has done pretty much every race so far of these Champions League races.
And looking at the data at the moment, we have Lord of the Sail, the Russian team that led off that start line, as being over the line on that start. So they didn't return back to the start line, so we'll wait for complete confirmation. But the information I'm receiving on the analytics here is saying that will be an OCS for them in this race.
So we can discount the Russians from this race as things stand, which pushes the French into the lead, followed by another Russian boat, one of 3 in this race, St. Petersburg Yacht Club. Then come the Finns, Nielenska Yacht Club, followed by the Austrians, Yacht Club Bregenz. Currently in 4th, they're the ones who went back and started again.
So exactly, it's that sort of from the breeze, they got a good shift out of that, clearing their lane, making sure they weren't getting congested with the other boats, and it's given them a little bit of lease of life to breathe through. What you will see at this top mark again, as we've mentioned, is the Lord of Sail team, the Russian team, will be told that they will be over the start line, and you'll probably see that boat number 5 peeling off at the top mark. So as they come in towards that top mark, you'll likely see that boat continue on and sit out of this section.
So the French reached that mark first. They're around the mark, followed closely by Lord of Sail of Russia. We'll see what happens to them. They're OCS. So in 3rd place there with the green boat are the Finns, and it looks like relatively clean mark rounding for all the teams. And bringing up the rear, St. Petersburg Yacht Club.
So we can see how light the breeze is, that as soon as those boats cluster together.
Oh, it took a while for the spinnaker on that rear boat to puff out, didn't it?
Well, that's it. You can see they're all clustered together. They're struggling for this little bit of breeze. The big Jenicas on these boats, and so they cover a huge amount of area that if you're tucked down below them, the breeze can be really struggled to get across those sails. And that's where, as soon as they bunch together, clearing your air and sailing away from everyone gives you that little bit of freedom of speed. But there we can see on board, this is Lord of Sail taking the Jenica down. If you're wondering what's going on, they were notified at that top mark to say they are OCS, so you will see that pink boat leaving the race course. So handing the race to the lead boat, as we can see it, the French boat out in front, leading down towards that left-hand side of the course.
And it's interesting that that information has been passed to them and that they've understood it and are taking action, because I can't think of that actually happening in any of the other acts. Most of the crews have just sailed on and finished their race, I guess, in order to use it as a practice.
Rightly so, and it's a good sign of respect for the umpires and the race organisers for a boat to do that. But as you say, it is also practice they can be putting in, but we'll see how it goes.
So that's number 5, Lord of the Sail. They're out of it. But at the front of the fleet, there's a real battle going on between the Germans and the French. The Deutsche Touring Yacht Club and the Club Voile Saint-Quentin. And in the mix as well, the team from Helsinki in 3rd place.
So you can see the favouritism towards this gate mark, with a lot of the boats favouring this side. But actually, there's a, you know, again, the water's pretty disturbed out there. It's quite choppy, different to what they've experienced certainly in the other two acts. And you saw from that drone shot there the amount of ribs firing around, being umpire boats, but again, disturbing the water. And so in these lighter conditions, it's going to come down to keeping that rig up to speed. And certainly with these guys that were going on board now, the Finn boats here, good breeze, cleared away from everyone else. It's just all focus, all about speed.
You talk about the light winds, but they're certainly making fast progress. And it doesn't look that light out there.
No, well, looking at the breeze stats that we've got out there at the moment, we've probably seen the strongest sort of part of the breeze, and we're coming up into about 12.5 knots now, which is exactly what they're using. Seeing boat speeds of up over 6 knots of boat speed upwind, which is great speeds for these boats. You can see now the crews all just starting to get their weight up onto the side and over the side to generate more power out of that rig. And certainly they've made a nice choice here and making a jump over the Deutsche Touring Yacht Club coming in from the left side.
Now this boat number 4, was helmed by George Tolberg, the bronze medalist from the Moscow Olympics when they last competed. And I think he's been moved further to the front of the boat. And Kenneth Thelen seems to have taken the helm in this race. We need to get confirmation of that. But right hot on their tails, boat number 7, the Germans from Deutsche Touring Yacht Club. And both crews trying to chase down the French. The French, boat number 2. The French from Saint-Quentin Yacht Club near Paris. David Bougour at the helm. And now coming into the bottom mark for the first time in the lead.
And so you can see these 3 boats, the separation created from the rest of the fleet. Good boat speed, clear breeze, and sailing the shifts well. So there wasn't too many shifts on that course, but there seems to be this consistent shift about midway up the course, which most of them accepted and jumped onto. A good hoist at the front of the fleet just to try and extend their lead away. They try and nip below the rest of the fleet as they come in on this port ley line. So very congested. And again, it's all about just getting settled down, getting that Jenica set. And this will be their run down as leg number 4 down to the finish.
So 1, 2, 3 and 4 around. 5th place is just going round now. And the Austrians from Bregenz have just sneaked in there ahead of the other boats, ahead of the Danish boat around that bottom mark. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3 now.
So you can see their positioning, how they're just trying to stagger themselves just onto their lower quarter of the boat. It enables as the boat in front goes into a jibe, they can also jibe simultaneously to act as a covering. And you can see that even though the breeze was a nice little breeze that we've got up to 12 knots, you can still see how fickle those Jenicas are to keep flying. So a jibe out from the finish boat now to try and just get a bit of breathing space away from Deutsche Touring Yacht Club.
On the screen, we will see the finish line as they are halfway down the final leg with the French well in command. And there is the green finish line that they're aiming for. So it looks like we're going to have a few more manoeuvres from these guys before they can hit the finish line.
You'll certainly see boats 1 and 3 and the rest of the fleet all having to jibe back across towards the fleet, and the same with the Finnish boat having to also put in 1 more manoeuvre each. But it will also come down to the bias on that finish line. It is the same as the start line, so the nearest end towards them will be favouring the French team on that right side.
Now there's very little in it, 25 metres separating the leader from the rest of the fleet. But my goodness, how close is it for second place? There's just, 5 or 6 metres separating the French and the Germans. They pass the gates from the upwind leg, and now it's just a few metres down to the finish line. And you've got to think that the French are going to have this in the bag. But with things so close, the slightest error on their final manoeuvre could cost them the race.
Well, this is it as they come right down into the finish line. They crossed the line, the French there, to take the lead with just over 10 metres gap from second place. It was interesting zooming in on that finish boat there. They hadn't popped that top mainsail batten, and so actually would have been sailing slightly slower all the way down that last section as they jibed. So if they actually had changed, that could have been maybe a few more metres in it, and it could have been even tighter.
Ostlegal Sailing take the honours for the Russian boats competing, followed by St. Petersburg Yacht Club, and then the Austrians and Hellerup. Bregenz take that particular position ahead of Hellerup Sail Club. So that's our top 7, and obviously we lost Lord of the Sail of Russia, OCS, having crossed that start line early.
That's going to have a big impact to their results on the leaderboard. With all of these races being countable, it's all about consistency, all about keeping yourself in those top few spots and carrying a maximum point such as an OCS, such as Lord of the Sail were handed in that last race.
Yes, well, they went in overnight in the top 4, I believe, and now they're down to 12th. So it's been a bad day for the Russians so far. Plenty of sailing still to come, of course, and plenty of opportunities for the team from Yekaterinburg in the Ural Mountains to make a proper and real comeback. So I'll just confirm how that race finished. Race 21, which was the first race of Flight 6. It went to the French from Saint-Quentin, then came Nielanska Yacht Club of Finland, and then in third place, Deutsche Touring Yacht Club of Germany. Then we had 2 Russian teams, Ostlegal Sailing and St. Petersburg Yacht Club. The Austrians from Bregenz came in 6th, and Hellerup Sail Club of Denmark came in 7th.
So while Alex has just been going through that leaderboard a little bit, you can see a couple of the stats that we've got here from the analytics, the speed versus distance versus manoeuvres. And we can see that certainly some of it all pans out quite easily with some of the higher speed boats being at the front. But the manoeuvres is certainly a big jump there from the first of the Russian boats, Ostlegal Sailing, up to 10 manoeuvres. The distances, again, so what they're trying to do, each boat, minimum amount of distance, minimum amount of manoeuvres, maximum speed. But of course, at different times with different wind shifts, those adjustments are going to take place. So quite stable manoeuvres across the fleet, bar that one jumping out there, and similar speeds. So nothing too much from either boat, but being all one design boats and all sailing that, you wouldn't expect too much of a jump from these boats.
Now, I touched on this earlier on. What happens now is we've obviously got 8 J70 boats and 32 crews. So the crews that we've watched in the previous race will have jumped off, and the new crews are on. And then when everyone gives their okay, we then get into a pre-start, and we're almost there with just over 2.5 minutes to go to the start of the second race of Flight 6. Let me just run through who's in which boat. Boat 1 with the dark blue sail is Yacht Club Sopot of Poland. Then in boat number 2 with the red sail is Alenska Sail Club of Finland. Boat number 3, that's got a yellow sail, Almere Central of the Netherlands. Boat number 4 with the green spinnaker are the Italians from Rome, the Circolo Canottieri Agnene, one of 2 Italian teams competing here in Sardinia. Boat number 5 with the pink sail is the Société Nautique de Genève. And then boat number 6 is Lindau Sail Club of Germany. They're in the purple sail, which, to be honest, on our screens could easily be a dark blue sail. We're constantly getting those confused. They've promised us they'll change that colour, the tone of pink or purple, for the next time. I think officially it's lilac. Boat number 7 with the grey sail, that's Achensee Yacht Club from Austria. And finally, boat number 8 with the light blue bow and sail, Ekholm Sail Club of Sweden. 1.5 minutes to go.
So the same course as we saw before, a windward-leeward course with a leeward gate. And then a straight through run to the finish. We still have a slight bias towards that pin end. So that is that red mark just in front of the starting boat. We can see where all of the ribs are positioned. There is about a 4-meter advantage down towards that end. So it's significant enough to gain that bias. Looking at the wind tracking that we have here on the analytics, certainly sitting in that mid course, it's certainly saying that favouring one side of the race course to the other. There is no benefit, certainly at the moment. So those boats all lining up, holding position. So again, just looking to do a trigger pull and accelerate and aim to hit that line at perfect moment where they're at full speed in a clear lane. So nice position here. You can see a couple of the boats favouring up towards this committee boat, looking just to get a good bit of speed as they come into the line with 10 seconds to go.
The Italian team, boat number 4, far end of the line, creeping, edging forward. Will they be over early? From this angle, they look okay. I think they will be, but we'll have to obviously wait for the analytics to give us confirmation of that. And it's a clear start, we can see from the flag on the committee boat.
So the flag on the committee boat has picked up that there is one boat or a couple of individual boats over that line. And so certainly looking from what we saw from the analytics and also the view there, we see one boat returning back, but the boat that looked prominent at the front of that was the Italians down at that pin end. But we are waiting for confirmation of that to see what that boat returning, whether it will have cancelled out that flag.
Well, certainly Achensee of Austria have gone round and started again, so they've taken the penalty. Here's a replay of the start. The Italians were certainly away first. And we're hearing boat number 4, which was the Italians, was over early.
So we've seen exactly the same happen in the last race. The boat keen for that bias end of the start line, coming off that port end, but just mistiming that acceleration. And again, this could be huge, a very costly error again for the Italian team.
So leg 1 of this race, heading upwind, and it's all still bow to bow right now. Difficult one to call, and although I've been told that the Italians were over the line early, there's nothing officially come through on our screens on the analytics, so we'll keep an eye on that. But as things stand, the Italians are leading, followed by the Swiss, and then come the Germans.
And now the data coming through to us that the Italians have been OCS. So started early, and again, another big hit for someone that was really starting to make their move up the ladder. So you'll see them again peel out maybe towards the top end of this race course, or as they start to make their downwind leg, they are notified, but suddenly throws everything into options for the other boats. So we can see Société Nautique de Genève just coming in, creeping up into a good ley line position as they make their way up into this top mark. They've got good speed, a couple of meters just shy of that lead boat, but again, they don't have to worry about that boat anymore. Whether they know that or not, they won't be thinking about that. It'll just all be about racing. But 3 boats coming in on this port ley line. It'll be interesting to see. Boat number 5 down in the bottom corner of the red boat when they tack and approach on starboard as they come back in towards that windward mark, whether there will be any possibilities of any penalty calls.
It looks like the leading boats have it, coming into that top mark. Lorenzo Bressani helming the Italian boat. And I guess at this point they will be informed of their OCS, and then they'll have to decide whether to pull out or continue and use this as a training race. Right behind them, boat number 5 from Geneva. Boat number 6, Lindau Segel Club of Germany. And it's congested there, isn't it?
Very, very tight. Ooh, a bad hoist anyway from the Italians there. The kite you saw then set very quickly without it being up to the top of the mast. And by doing so, pulled the boat heavily over to leeward, made the boat skew up towards the wind. But now information has come through to them. You can see them clearly now starting to drop that Jenica and come back. But even if that information hadn't been fed, they probably would have lost that top spot straight from that one manoeuvre.
An immensely experienced Italian crew. They'll be very disappointed indeed with that performance on that particular race. So we say goodbye to them, and we watch the Swiss now move away in the lead, followed by Lindauer Segel Club of Germany. And then come the Poles. They've sort of come out of nowhere on this second leg. The Poles from Yacht Club Sopot, currently sitting in third.
Well, it'll be very interesting for the Swiss team and also Lindenhaus Eagle Club with any good results like they are currently in first and second. We'll see them jump back up into fighting for those podium places overall. So this is going to be a very important race for them. Of course, plenty more racing still to go, but that lead jibe going in from the Swiss team to try and clear a bit more space, bit of clear air, get away from that traffic. It took a little while to get that kite set and settle back in. Now the team are starting to settle back down and get that boat up to speed. 2 other boats favouring the same shift. We see the German team at Lindenhaus Eagle Club taking it a bit further to that far end, likely aiming for that right-hand gate mark to try and squeeze a bit of an advantage and put some pressure on the Swiss team that are out in front now.
So here we are at the mark again. Société Nautique de Genève leading the way. They finished 8th in St. Moritz to qualify middle of the fleet and qualify for this final. They managed 2 victories in Act 2 in St. Moritz. How are they going to do over the weekend here? Right now, they're heading for their first of the weekend.
So you can see a clear split, but again, the team's favouring that right-hand gate mark, so that furthest mark away from us as we look at it. But instantly, these first 2 boats, Yacht Club Sopot, taking taking the tack out early onto that shift and wanting to come back in towards the mid part of this race course. And it's certainly with the breeze and the trackers that we've got on the marks, we are seeing the more favourable route on this course is towards that left-hand side. Every now and again, a little shift taking it towards the right, but certainly some nice speeds of the boats going upwind there as we see the breeze still up into 11 to 12 knots. So more than what was expected, certainly providing some great racing.
So as they head upwind for the final time in this race, still all to race for. It is still so close between those top 3 boats.
So between the first and second boats, just a 12-metre gap between them. So not a lot. These boats will close that gap, or now it's just extended out a little bit, going up to 26 metres. And this breeze, you can see beautiful conditions. The breeze now starting to get a little bit of white caps on some of the tops of these waves as we look upwind. This will be making the crews work extra hard, generating extra single power, but we saw the mistakes coming in. If a mistake goes in and too much power, you'll lose control of that boat. Exactly what happened to the Italian team as they rounded that top mark. And so it's still now the teams are, rather than focusing on looking at maximum speed, trying to generate huge power, it's actually about maintaining power and keeping these boat handling skills slick.
Boats 1 and 2, as in first and second, the Swiss and the Germans on our screens right now. The Germans from Lake Constance, enjoying very different conditions from those that they're used to back home.
So they're approaching into that top mark. You can see the lead and escape away from the rest of the fleet as the top boat comes in. The Swiss team still leading with a comfortable lead over their German rivals. And you can see that gap closing up quickly as these boats come in towards this top mark. They've still got a lot of manoeuvre still to go.
And the Finns are sneaking in there into third place as they round the mark and begin their final leg to the finish line. Almere Central of the Netherlands in fourth, just round the mark. And then come the Swedes from Ekholms Sail Club.
Well, just seeing there, the two boats in the right-hand side of the picture, yellow and the blue boat, there was a clear penalty from tacking in close to that mark. As they approach that mark, it'll be interesting to see what happens and what the umpire do and whether a penalty will be handed out. So that was Almere Central tacking in at that windward mark and certainly look to have breached the rules, with Yacht Club Sopot having to take avoiding action and head up towards the wind. But we wait to hear from the jury and the umpires on the water making that call, whether a penalty will be handed out. But look at the lead two boats sitting comfortable.
Well, meanwhile, the Swiss lead the fleet down to the finish line, extending their lead at the front of the fleet. They're away, they're in control, and it would take a real disaster to see them throw this away. The Swiss heading for their third victory of the weekend. They are having a tremendous time. It's the same crew that competed in St. Moritz. They were competing together, not for the first time, but on a J70. They hadn't had much practice time before the qualifiers in St. Moritz. They came through that, and now they look like they have absolutely gelled together, and they are now registering their third victory of the weekend here in Porto Cervo. And of their 6 races so far, only once have they been out of the podium places. So a tremendous performance from Guillaume Giraud, Mark Stern, Nicolas Kaufmann and Mathieu Fischer on Société Nautique de Genève, as we watch the second place boat number 6 from Lindau Sail Club of Germany come in second place. Right now, it looks like the Finns on boat number 2 from Alenska Sail Club come in third place. Then come the Dutch from Almere Central. And then it's Yacht Club Sopot, the Poles, who at one point were in third place, but they're going to have to be satisfied with 5th. Followed closely by the Swedes from Ekholms Sail Club and then the Austrians from Achensee.
So with those first 2 boats crossing the line, the Swiss team Société Nautique de Genève taking their third win, but also securing themselves up into second place after that on the overall leaderboard. And again, with Linnau Siegel Club also with their second place, jumps them up to third. So those two boats we saw fighting it out at the front of that fleet have cemented themselves quite firmly at the top end of the leaderboard.
Confirmation then of the results. Race 2, Flight 6 on the screen there in front of you. 8th place going to the Italian team from Rome. OCS over the line early, and they will be extremely disappointed with that, because that will have put a massive dent on their hopes of winning this trophy and winning the Champions League.
It's interesting that you can see now from this drone shot how far the boats are actually out. A little bit of distance away from the shoreline, but creating superb racing conditions, and you can see why it's such a favourite for world-class sailors in all types of boats.
Okay, we're going to take a look now at the data of the top boats and see, because that often gives us a real insight into, you know, how the leading boat won and why they won, and it's a great help, I know, to the sailors once they come off the water to sort of get an analysis of their manoeuvres, because often they think, oh, what went wrong there? You know, we had a good race, and then they realise that, yeah, they'd actually travelled half a kilometre further than their competitors.
Very much so. The analytics are superb. Being able to access for all of the sailors and for all of you at home by going on to sapsailing.com and then clicking onto the Sailing Champions League final. Then you'll be able to track down and follow each race, but the depths that you can go into in each race and really start to see what is happening, what happened on that race course, where their competitors came from, where the advantages and disadvantages were made. And exactly as you were saying there, is the number of manoeuvres, speed and distance are three of the key components to a boat race. You're always looking to try and minimise distance. And again, if you're able to do that, but maximise speed and minimise manoeuvres. In these boats, they're very manoeuvrable, the J70. So there we go. Similar sort of stats as we had to the last race. The speed's all slightly higher. We have got a little bit more breeze again now. Looking out on that race course, we are getting up to gusts of 13 to 14 knots. So that indicates why the speeds are slightly higher. But again, that lead boat clocking that higher speed, minimising manoeuvres, and again we can see minimising the amount of distance sailed. So that is why they were at the front of the fleet. They came off that start line, they stuck to their guns, good speed, minimised manoeuvres and minimal amount of distance, and that sits them firmly at the top there. But we can see how suddenly a number of manoeuvres can be undertaken, and that could be due to a poor start, it could be an incident, could be a penalty situation, which is why those manoeuvres much higher on the Dutch boat that we see in fourth place. But you can see how tight the racing is when the boats are these one design J70s. Speeds very similar, but everyone can creep out that little bit more speed by having clear air. And certainly with the breeze clocking now up to towards 14 knots, 14 and a half knots we've got out on that race course, we are seeing quicker speeds.
So, not long to go to the third race of Flight 6. Obviously, we're halfway through the sixth flight of this competition. 12 flights planned overall, 48 races in total. It means every team gets to race 12 times. The crews have been swapped. The new crews will be preparing to go into their pre-start sequence now. So with 90 seconds to the start, let me just run through who's in which boat. We see the Lithuanians for the first time in boat number 1, the blue boat, GVK Plateau 25 Association. We'll call them GVK from now on. Boat number 2, the red boat, is from Vasa, from Finland. It's the red boat. On the yellow boat, boat number 3, Segel Club Matse of Austria, our winners back in St. Moritz. And what an impressive performance they put on. The green boat, boat number 4, is the Verein Sail Club from Wannsee in Germany. Then boat number 5, pink boat, pink sail, Frederikshavn Sail Club from Denmark. The NRV Club from Germany are in the lilac or purple boat number 6. Boat number 7 with the grey sail. The only British team taking part in the Champions League here. Port Edgar Yacht Club. And then boat number 8 with the light blue sail will be Yacht Club Scheveningen of the Netherlands. So that's who's who. And we're 10 seconds or so to the start line, with boat number 6 from Germany leading the way to the start. They've had a bit of a traumatic competition so far, but I think it's going to be a clean start for everyone.
So it certainly looks like we are raising. There were no flags up on the committee boat, so identifying a clean start. So a great start from the German team.
NRV from Hamburg leading the fleet across the line, followed closely by Segel Club Matse in second, and then GVK from Lithuania in third place. Then come the Scots from Port Edgar, and then it's a battle for 5th and 6th between the Germans and the Austrians as well. But still, very, very early days in this race. And the boat out in front is currently Segel Club Matse from Austria.
So a great position off that start line. A lot of teams tend to hang back in that middle part of the line and what we call the line sag. So very difficult to judge where you want to be on that line, but they nailed that, and that's put them in exactly this strength position as they go towards that left-hand side of the course, but we're well up on the rest of the boats. Good speed, and it gives them great opportunity to take this next shift.
A really interesting battle between the helms on those 2 leading boats as well. The Austrians with a 21-year-old Stefan Scharnagel, who helmed the Austrian entry into the Youth America's Cup, facing the German helm of Toby Schadewald, 33 years old, former Olympic 49er sailor. Will experience or youth win out? Or can someone else come through? Right now, anything could happen. Look how close these boats are. Look at the distances between them. There's hardly anything in it.
And as we see the breeze going up to close to 14 knots now, fantastic conditions, what we call champagne conditions, sunshine and wind to sail these boats, and all of the sailors will be thriving on this. The wind round towards that left-hand side, it is giving advantage to those top boats furthest away from the camera. Those will be your lead boats as they approach that top mark, but it's the boats here now going into tacks and approaching on that right-hand side will have the right with regard to the rules coming in on starboard. But only when they close that gap towards this top mark will we see whether there'll be any incidents.
We're currently with the leaders closest to us. And the fleet nicely split down the middle. 4 on the left, 4 on the right. And they're all going to come into that top mark. There's going to be plenty of congestion, and I suspect a fair bit of shouting as well on board.
I'm sure we're going to hear certainly plenty coming in just to provide that communication as they come in. So there's the lead boat, German boat, Norddeutsche Regatta Wein. That is the purple sails in that top left-hand side. Will they have the breathing space? We suddenly see Seagull Club Matze take that dip behind the rest of the boat, so they were unable to make that clear transition in front of the starboard boat. One boat slips through at the top. That will give them a firm position at the top. So we saw the Austrian team there slide back to sixth due to having to duck those starboard boats. We saw that implication come in, but round, no such problems for the German team leading out in front.
So NRV head downwind for the first time. The Danes following close on their heels, but so close. So easy to pick up penalties in that situation.
There we are. We're looking at the umpire there and keeping an eye on whether a flag gets raised in spite of those penalties, just to indicate who has a penalty. But so far, they seem to be comfortable with what happened there. Very, very tight racing.
4 umpire boats following things very closely indeed. But no penalties there. So all clear, all heading down to the bottom mark, with the Germans still very much in control, followed by the Danes. Then come the Finns. And Seagull Club Matze of Austria, who started so well, have slipped a little bit, down to 4th place. But more importantly, 50 metres behind the leaders right now.
Well, just as you were saying that, as the camera panned onto them, they are the yellow boat just tucked in behind. There was good acceleration from them. This breeze now giving opportunity for these boats to plane downwind, so the team's working the boat. You can see the angle changes on the boat closest to us, number 3. The yellow spinnaker and the yellow mainsail there, taking those angles, accelerating as they head up a little bit. It's suddenly boats pushing in for breeze, and they've certainly closed the distance on these lead boats and put themselves firmly in contention as they come down to this bottom gate. Leading remains the same. Norddeutsche Regatta Wein lead round, but very, very tight from the other 2 boats, with Seagull Club Matze just parking it a little bit to enable the Finnish boat to nip round inside, but a better rounding coming out with better position from the Austrian team, allowing them to be able to attack up this next leg.
So the Germans on boat number 4, Verein Sail Club from Wannsee, taking this side of the course and being followed round by Yacht Club Scheveningen of the Netherlands. The Dutch placed 13th in St. Petersburg, just enough to qualify for this Champions League final. And they've made 4 changes, so a complete crew change between St. Petersburg and here. It's interesting because we do have some pro sailors on board some of these boats, but in their case, they're all amateurs. They had to take time off work, and it was a case of who could get the time off work. So they split the team into 2, and 4 went off and did the competition in St. Petersburg. They qualified them, and now 4 new members come and take the reins and hope to do better than the 13th place that their colleagues got in St. Petersburg.
Well, that's what's so good about this format, is the mixture of ages, abilities of sailors, the amateur sailors, the professional sailors, all playing out on one race course. And with 12 races to be, or maximum to be completed for each team, and no discards in place, every single race matters. And we've seen obviously some fairly big penalties come in, with 2 boats being on course side over the last couple of races, and so nothing's over in any of these races.
So Wannsee have tacked back in, heading towards that top mark for the final time. Flying the flag of their club from Berlin. Very, very well known, illustrious German sailing club, home of Jochen Schumann, probably one of their most famous Olympic sailors in recent times, and currently sitting in third.
So there you can see those top boats tacking simultaneously. Norddeutsche Regattaverein, they will be happy with their ley line shout, which is the direct line to that windward mark. And the boat just sat up, and the Danish boat just up onto their hip to keep themselves a little bit of clear air as they come in. But approaching fast from the left-hand side is the Finnish boat again, but will not have any rights as they come into this mark. Are they going to try and squeeze that gap? They are trying to punch through this gap. This is very, very close. Big tack in underneath. A big manoeuvre again from the Danish team to avoid any kind of contact.
The Finns around in second. Then come the Danes. Frederikshavn Sail Club currently in third and chasing. Very little between second and third right now. Bit of an overlap, in fact.
So as we were watching there, close in on that top mark, we saw the Finnish boat take that tack close in front of the Danish boat, where we saw that avoidance happen. We did see the jury boat from the drone footage shoot over towards those boats and raise a flag, but we couldn't see exactly what that is, whether there's been a penalty applied or whether it was all clear. We'll try and find some more information about that and bring that, but certainly we're seeing the Finnish boat really putting the hammer down and the pressure firmly on the German boat leading at Norddeutsche Regattaverein. With these surfing conditions, it's every opportunity. There's no let up for the crews now. We see the surge forward on these waves. Beautiful conditions out on the waters here.
So not long to the finish line, which will come into shot very shortly on the left-hand side of the screen as Toby Shadowalt leads his team towards that finish line. There are two changes made to their crew for this final. Two changes since they qualified in St. Petersburg, as well as Shadowalt. Florian Spalterholz comes on. So a change of helm. Johannes Polgar, who helmed them to qualification in St. Petersburg, not on the boat this time. But Toby Shadowalt, after a shaky start yesterday, seems to have got it together as they cross the finish line in first place and win that vital race for them, because that keeps them in touch with the leaders on the overall standings. Then come the Finns, Vasa Sail Club, and in third place, confirmed, Frederikshavn Sail Club of Denmark. Now, interesting to see this battle for fourth, currently being led by Vanse of Germany. But two boats closely on their heels. The Germans take it. Then come the Lithuanians, and then it looks like the Dutch from Scheveningen. And again, we'll wait for that confirmation. Port Edgar Yacht Club of Scotland bringing up the rear. And that is how they finish then on the screen. That is the confirmed result. So well done to the German team, seemingly overcoming the hiccups of day one to register a win here in Porto Cervo. Could it be the start of a major comeback that sees them take the title? They're certainly amongst the favourites to win it here. A disappointment, though, for the Austrians from Segel Club Matze, who finished well down in 7th place. High hopes for them. Another favourite coming into this. They were supreme in qualification in St. Moritz, winning winning the event. In fact, they were either first or second in all but one of their 8 races. But can they refine that form here in Porto Cervo? Only time will tell. We have the final race of Flight 6 coming up shortly.
So there we can see some of the stats from our SAP analytics. Again, higher boat speed at the front of the fleet, registering just over the 6 knots. Again, with the stronger breeze, it was a bit up and down from 12 to 14 knots, which is the threshold where we see these J70s push up over that 6 knot barrier. But again, very similar maneuvers. We're seeing across the board those top sort of boats anywhere between 6, 7, 8 maneuvers to minimize on this short race course. So distances again very similar, a certain distance from the Finnish boat there, quite a number shorter, but also their speed slightly slower. So even though they sailed a slightly shorter distance, that speed has cost them. If that speed was a little bit more, could have seen that possibly been a different place change.
So just a few minutes to go to our final race of the flight. Chance to have a look in detail at some of the teams and who's competing in this final race then of Flight 6. Starting with boat number 1, the dark blue sail that you can see just there on the screen. That's KKKK Club from Sweden. Boat number 2 with the red sail, the Société de Régate d'Antibes from the south of France. Boat number 3 with the yellow sail. That's the Kongelig Dansk Yacht Club from Denmark. Then comes the second French boat in the fleet, boat number 4, with the green spinnaker APCC Voile Sportif. Boat number 5, with the pink coloured sail, are from Norway, from Kongelig Norsk Sail Club. Boat number 6, with the lilac coloured sail. They are our current overall leaders, our first chance to watch this immensely experienced crew in action. The Yacht Club Costa Smeralda in boat number 6. Boat number 7 with the grey sail, Cape Crow Yacht Club of Sweden. And boat number 8 with the light blue sail, Regatta Club Bodensee of Switzerland. So this really is an opportunity to not just watch our leaders in action, and there's just 3 points between them and the second-placed Swiss team from Geneva in the overall leaderboard. Obviously, Geneva won their race earlier on. We saw that. There's not a lot Geneva can do but sit and watch right now. But will we see the local club wobble and throw things away, or can they hold on to that top spot? The other team to keep an eye out for are Société de Régate d'Antibes from the south of France. They're currently sitting in 5th place. So they are the 2 teams that are in the top 8 in the overall leaderboard. They're the ones to keep an eye out for. A minute to go to the start.
So a similar setup again. The boats all jostling for position, trying to rack up and find their comfortable position to judge this time and distance to the line. We've seen it be pulled off perfectly in the last race from Seagull Club Matse, but we also have seen numerous attempts where it has arisen early to that start. Lord of the Sail was penalised for exactly that.
Now the Italians with Flavio Favini at the helm, 2 America's Cups behind him. You might recognise the name. He was helmman of Mascalzone Latino in the Valencia America's Cup, the 32nd America's Cup in 2007. So immense experience, and right now trying to get a good start off the line here. He's boat number 6, you can see there in the freeze frame. So the clock's counted down to 0. The race is away. And it looked like the APCC Voile Sportive Club of France were away in the lead with Société de Regatte d'Antibes in 2nd place. So and already the home team, Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, tacks away, heads off to the right side. The leaders head off to the left. The Italians followed closely by the Norwegians in the pink boat. And it looks to me like it's not just the wind getting up, but the waves are too.
Very much so, and that's something that they're all having to adapt and deal with, and why we're seeing the home...
Is that start again, the clean start for everyone, with the French from Antibes getting away alongside their fellow countrymen on the left side of the line.
So a clear tack out from the home team there. You can see them diving down behind the backs of every single boat.
So what was the thinking behind that then? Because they were the first to go.
Well, watching them where they were positioned on that start line, they were sat quite a long way back, expecting to potentially accelerate the boat earlier, but misjudged their timing, whether they were still playing with any adjustments with the rig and just not set up in the right place. So when the actually acceleration came on, everyone accelerated with them, and they misjudged that line. So they were sat in dirty air. The only option was to peel out and get onto that fresh tack, and this is exactly where we're seeing them now, tucked up right close to camera. The grey bibs.
So the leaders, the current leaders, on the far side of this shot, but the boat closest to us, the overall leaders here in Costa Smeralda.
Quite a slow tack as they came out there. They hit some couple of big waves. Again, you can see that bounce. Boat number 5 suddenly shoots forward on that section, and that shows the difference is that when these waves are starting to build, it's all about timing when it comes into attack, a jibe, any maneuver, positioning yourself on. Can you accelerate down the wave when going downwind? And certainly upwind, it's all about keeping smooth rig, keeping that boat powered up. And that's what these sailors, and certainly the helm, is maximising with control of that mainsail and the tiller.
But right now in the lead, heading up to that top mark, boat number 7, Cape Crow Yacht Club of Sweden. From the small island near Gothenburg. And currently looking good for a good place finish in this race. Early days though, as we come to the end of the first leg, with the team from Antibes also heading in. But that green boat, boat number 4, APCC Voile Sportive of France, rounding the mark in first place.
So a nice, comfortable bit of breathing space there as they go for the hoist. A clean set, very good hoist, very quick. You can see them accelerate away from that. Another good hoist from boat number 2, a little bit late onto the sheet. But you can see how much difference that makes, just being able to soak slightly lower and have a lower angle as the rest of the fleet all converge round and tightly compact. And if you're wondering to say it's the umpire boats that are blasting around and whizzing around in circles, they are there to keep an eye on the rules, keep everyone fair.
And so the French team from Nantes head down wind for the first time in this race, in the lead, but there's still not very much in it at all. And it's not just a battle for the win, but it's a battle for second and third and fourth and fifth. It could go either way.
Really interesting. Just watching the home team there, left of picture, just gone out of picture, were sailing by the lee a long way in what we call goose swinging, where you're bringing the kite over to one side, the main on the other side to enable you to sail a lot lower angle. Didn't hold it for that long and went into the jibe, but whether they were doing that just to enable them to soak slightly lower and give them an attacking opportunity when these boats come back on the opposite jibe.
Team from Nantes stretching their lead ever so slightly, metre by metre. St. Moritz was the first time that they'd sailed together. It was their first time in a J70. And they've only made one change since that qualification act in St. Moritz. And they certainly look like they've got it together now as they round that mark and start to take control of the race. Cape Crow Yacht Club round in second, and here comes the local team. They've chosen the left side of this gate. Will that be the right decision? No one knows the waters better than they do.
Well, certainly looking at the wind angles from the analytics, it is favouring this right-hand side of the course, so it will give them benefit from taking this gate. Mark was slightly lower, so it is the unbiased end of the gate, but they obviously felt the favoritism of this breeze being over towards that right-hand side as a much bigger pull to willing to take that sacrifice.
Okay, so boat number 6, the local club, currently sitting in second place. That second place position keeps them overall in the lead. Should they drop down, they will lose control of the leaderboard. So they need to stay up there at the front of the fleet right now.
So as they approach this right-hand side, the breeze now flicks back towards that left-hand side. They are on this left tack, and so getting that shift, and so that is giving them the advantage. They have got clear air, and they're not being congested by any other boats, so this will give them a little bit of an advantage, but there is a big gap up towards that front end of the fleet as they go into attack and come back towards the middle of the fleet to enable them the option to be able to tack back out. They're not getting too far out to one side, which would reduce all of their options. Sticking towards that middle of the fleet brings them back in contention and enables them to attack their other competitors.
So much experience on board that Italian boat, and they're using it all now to try and reel in the French. French are having nothing of it, though. Neither of the French boats, because at the moment it's 1-2 to France, with the team from the French Riviera just sitting in second place. But will they still be there when we get to that top mark and head down for the final leg of this race?
So a clear lead out in front. Getting around that gate mark early, favouring that going into one final tack.
Well, barring disaster, I think the French from Nantes can presume that this one's in the bag, and the battle is for second place, and it is between those boats in the middle of the shot, the purple boat number 6 and the blue boat number 2, that have just crossed and are going to have to put in another tack to head into that gate.
So very tight racing, as you say. They'll just the lead boat, French team, will just be looking back just to keep an eye on anything going on, but the battle firmly on for these two boats here, the home club, Italian, and the other French boat. As they battle it out, coming in towards this ley line, up in towards this windward mark. This will be their final leg, downwind to the finish. So are we going to see some attacking manoeuvres here?
So the Italians round the mark. They're heading off down to the finish line in second place at the moment. That's a good enough result to keep them top of the overall leaderboard. Then come the French from Antibes. They're also chasing a top 5 finish overall. The yellow boat, the Kongelig Dansk Yacht Club from Denmark. Also in the hunt for a podium finish here.
So you can now see again from the overall shot as we're looking down on the boats, the angles these boats are sailing. You can see them snaking about, soaking down when that breeze is on. When that breeze goes light, accelerating up. The crew on board there, perfect shot from that sideline camera. Is just the sheeting going on from the crew on board, pumping that Jenica, trying to maximize the speed and close that gap. But there's certainly, with over or just under 80 meters gap over the rest of the fleet, this is a done and dusted.
So I think we're looking at the top 3 finishing as they are at the moment, with France taking first and third, and the Italians sandwiched in between in second place. And then in the end, a really good performance from that yellow boat, the Royal Danish Yacht Club, the all-female, the only all-female team here, putting in a good performance, and we'll see where they end up. And so the win goes to APCC Voile Sportive of Nantes. They claim the race. Damien Yell helming the boat and taking them across the finish line for that victory. Second goes to the local team, and that'll please the home crowd watching on screens here at the clubhouse. And then the team from Antibes in the south of France take third. Royal Danish Yacht Club take fourth. Fifth goes to the Swedes. The Royal Norwegian Yacht Club come through in sixth. And then comes the Regatta Club Bodensee in seventh, and Cape Crow Yacht Club. What happened to them? They were third at one point. And I'm just looking at their, yeah, they were third on leg one, and then got it all wrong, dropped down to eighth, and were never able to recover. So not a great race for the Swedes in this particular race. I'm sure we'll see them fight back though. They've shown their mettle in qualification before. But importantly, what that result does is keep the Italians top of the overall leaderboard, but just by a point. They've had their lead cut to just a point, with the Swiss from Geneva in second place, and a point further back, Lindauer Segel Club of Germany. So there's confirmation on the screen of the result of race 4, flight 6, and flight 6 has been concluded.
So there we go. We can see a lot more manoeuvres coming in from the home team at Yacht Club at Costa Esmeralda, with 13 manoeuvres that we saw early off that start line. They were down late on that, pulling the trigger, so it caused them to take a couple of extra tacks to clear their air. So that's where we see those manoeuvres bolted on, also taking that extra, looking towards that right-hand gate mark and trying to split away. So that's where those extra manoeuvres have come in. Boat speeds very similar, certainly for second place to fifth place as we look across them, but a clear speed difference from boat number 1 and 2. So great to see these speeds coming up and averaging across this race course, with the stronger breeze of 12 to 14 knots that we've got out on that course, but very similar distances and manoeuvres across all flights.
So well done to Damien Yell, Arg Bernard, Baptiste Hulin and Edward Gendreau, who helmed in Saint Moritz. Well done to them. They led from start to finish and claimed the race. So after our 6 flights so far, this is how things stand, with the local club just a point ahead. Then comes Société Nautique de Genève, and then come the Germans, the Lindau Segel Club. And then, look, a 4-point gap beginning to open up now between the top 3 and the rest of the fleet. And, you know, the rest of the teams who have an eye on a podium finish here in this Champions League final will need to pull their fingers out, because the top 3 are beginning to pull away. There's the bottom half, that OCS disastrous result for the other Italian team that's seen them drop down to 11th place. And bringing up the rear, Hellerup Sail Club at the bottom of the previous page, and then come the Swedes in 30th from Ekons Segel Club, not yet registering a podium finish. So we will get flight number 7 underway in just a few minutes. So just under 3 minutes to the start of Flight 7. We're on board a couple of boats on this race. And the particular boat we're looking at right now is the boat from Scotland, Port Edgar Yacht Club, who were complaining that they were going to have to fly a white flag because their actual team flag was lost before this. They hoped it wouldn't be a bad omen. Certainly the last race that we watched them in action in didn't go quite according to plan. So we'll see if they can turn things around in this 7th flight of the Champions League final here at Porto Cervo in Sardinia, Italy. Let me run through the other teams then. Boat number 1 with the blue boat is the KKKK Club from Sweden. Boat number 2 with the red sail from Aachensee. They are Austria, the Austrian team. Boat 3 with the yellow sail, Yacht Club Bregenz from Austria. Boat number 4 with the pink sail. We'll go on board with them shortly. Club Voile Saint-Quentin of France. Boat number 6 with the lilac sail, Segel Club Matze of Austria. Their chance to bounce back from a poor result earlier on in the day. Then on boat number 7, the grey boat from Alenska Sail Club from the Elland Islands in Finland. And boat number 8 with the light blue sail, NRV of Germany. So, questions to ask with a minute to go. Can NRV continue their comeback? They had a poor first day. They've got a win under their belts now. Can that be the start of an assault at the top, on the top half of the overall leaderboard, or have they left it too late? 55 seconds to go. You can see the start line on the screen. Which side is best?
So looking at the breeze at the moment, we have about 12 to 13 knots, a bias towards the left-hand side mark, the pin end mark, so furthest away from the committee boat, and also the wind favouring that left side. So we're going to see quite a lot of the boats attack that mark again.
We could see the NRV hassling the Scottish crew, but right now, 25 seconds to go. The line is the other side of that catamaran. You can just see the red buoy to the right there. That's where they're aiming for. They want to hit that as close to zero as possible. We're on board with Port Edgar Yacht Club. Just behind them, Alenska Sail Club of Finland. And the race has started with boat number 2, the Austrians from Aachensee, getting away first.
So again, those lead boats coming off that far side of the course. A much better start with all of them lined up in the right lanes, fighting and jostling for their position. We can see as we go on board now how hard the helm is working here with their mainsail, with their tiller to work over. We're seeing this ever-increasing swell and chop that's happening out on the water.
David Bougour at the helm of this club, based close to Paris, and currently sitting in 3rd place in this race. The light blue umpire rib following behind, keeping an eye on them and boat numbers 7 and 8 just to their right. And as you can see, as always, this first leg, always close. And everyone seems to have chosen the same side of the course except for this green boat, boat number 4, the Scots.
Yeah, they got bounced out early off this start line. And favoured getting over towards this right. It's not the favoured part of the course, but they needed to break out and get a bit of breeze. Clean air away from the rest of the fleet. Very interesting tacking position there as the helm stepped round behind the back of the boom rather than actually ducking down underneath it. Stepped around the back, looked pretty uncomfortable doing that. And certainly not the best attack, but we can see these boats now fighting it out over this right-hand side. And they'll be certainly keeping their fingers crossed the breeze will come back towards this right side.
Callum Calder at the helm here, 28 years old. all four know each other very well. They've been sailing together a long time, although not necessarily in a J70. So very much a learning curve, but they're used to the strong tides and currents of the North Sea where they sail.
Well, certainly the temperatures will be slightly different to what they're used to, and so you can clearly see the guys enjoying the conditions here, but certainly finding this racing tough with these top clubs as the lead boats, many of them pitching up over this ley line as we look at it now. They're coming in with more speed. They're going to rely on that speed as they duck down behind that ley line, but certainly that's much greater distance sail by being that far over the ley line.
So as things stand, Sail Club Matse in the hunt. Closest to us, Stefan Scharnagel at the helm, performing what Corky describes as a slightly strange tack. And his sister sitting just in front of him, Anna Scharnagel, calling tactics. But right now we're with the leaders, or we were with the leaders, boat number 5, Club Voile Saint-Quentin, and we're on board with them now. David Bougor working hard.
So we can see those boats as they close in nicely on that ley line. A couple of boats up above them. It's going to get very congested here at this top mark.
They're there, they're going round, and that is just how congested they are. They're all trying to sneak into the slightest space, and someone was going to take it. But the French still leading the fleet away, and I think have increased their lead on that manoeuvre.
Great hoist from them on board, and that accelerated away from the fleet and has given them a plenty of breathing space.
The Scottish boat from Port Edgar Yacht Club closing that gap and moving up the fleet. So
this is the boat here, the green boat coming in. Good speed, they've got kites set nice and early.
But the Austrians from Bregenz seeming to get things all wrong and going round.
They're going off into a penalty turn. You can see that kite's come down and now dropped them out of picture. This is played in a simultaneous jibe from boat number 1 into our left of picture. But again, Scottish boat jibing off and coming down into this pressure here. So a clear shift. Good breeze coming down, pressure now up to 15 knots out on that race course. So you can see now, as we're looking at the swell across here, the patterns are enabling these boats to come up onto it and surf down these waves. So this is where we're seeing these greater boat speed, seeing up to 8 knots of boat speed downwind with these Gennicas. The teams are fighting a lot harder on board now as they go downwind.
And there, just come up from the bottom of the screen, are NRV of Germany. We haven't talked much about them this race, but they are very much back in it and hunting for that first place. They're round the mark in second, having worked their way up the fleet on that second leg. Oh, just nipped in there. Boat number 2 from Austria, leaving the Germans in third. But the Germans, I think their crew work much cleaner, much better, and the Austrians gained a spot, and in so doing got themselves into a little bit of trouble and immediately lost that and are back down into third.
You can see exactly here now on that picture, that spinnaker down, tucked in on that boat. That spinnaker, they weren't ready for that. They jibed in, they jumped at the opportunity of trying to leave that door that was slightly open from the German team. But by doing so, the team weren't ready. The kite went over the side, it trawled the kite, and because of that, suddenly put the brakes on. And now, what could have been something quite comfortable where they could have sat themselves in third place with the position to attack second has now dragged them right down to the back of the fleet.
But what an opportunity for the Scots. From Port Edgar up into third place, battling it out with the Finnish team for that third place spot.
it. Nice position coming back up into the middle of the fleet to provide an option to attack those boats in front, but also keep an eye on those boats on this right-hand side. But certainly looking favourable as the lead boat. The French team now go into attack and come back across towards that middle of the fleet, not overdoing this ley line, which we saw many other boats doing on that first leg.
And there you can see the battle for third between Port Edgar and Alenska. And it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top when they reach that top mark. Oh, an interesting cross coming up between the Finns and the Brits. It looks
like they've tacked and gone back with them just below them to give them a controlling position still. But it is going to force their hand as they come towards that port ley line. They will certainly need to scrape out a little bit more speed or sail slightly higher and provide dirty air to that boat to force them into attack, which is exactly what's just happened there.
With the French coming up to the mark now.
So nice, comfortable speeds there from these front boats. Bit of breathing space, clean air, enabling that boat now to charge up towards that windward mark. As we see coming back in, the German team here, after having that bit of a battle at that bottom mark, firmly up into second place.
And if you're a little bit confused because there's a red mark and a white mark there, that's the umpires giving themselves options, and they let the boats know which mark it will be on each particular leg, depending obviously on the conditions and the wind direction and so on. So that's why they're rounding the white mark now. And the French have done it extremely well, and it's given them the opportunity to slightly increase their lead on the Germans. So no changes to the top three. But what is boat number 6 doing? Segel Club Matze of Austria, a penalty turn. Some sort of infringement went on there, and their fellow Austrians, Achensee, have really done little to recover the disastrous, their disastrous manoeuvres at the bottom mark.
Certainly has been pressure on for both of those boats there. A great hoist there, not all the way up to the top of the mast, so they'll make that slight adjustment soon. You can see the kite quite a distance away, probably a foot away from that top part of the mark. Someone will make the call, notice that's where it is, but it also gives them a bit of depth to be able to dive down lower, soak lower. But you can see these boats attacking these waves now. They're just larger dinghies, boats. You can use your body weight to roll the boat around, maneuver the boat, generate power using the sails. You can see the crew weight now just starting to lean back on these boats and pump that spinnaker. There's a big acceleration. The crews both pump simultaneously, the kite and the mainsail, as they try to attack from going from this early position. But look at the acceleration just there. One wave gain, and that's all it needs.
We're on board with the leaders as they head towards the finish line. And the acceleration was tremendous. You were talking about it, but fantastic to actually see it in reality. And the French claim that victory. They claim the first race of Flight 7, followed closely by the Germans from NRV. And then it's quite a way back to third place. But that is the third place boat. From Scotland, Port Edgar Yacht Club, helmed by Callum Calder, crossed the line in third place. And then come the Finns, Alenska Sail Club. Now, it'll be interesting to see. There were 3 Austrian teams in this race. None of them have finished yet. There are only 4 places left to talk about.
It's all very tight as it's separated out from across that course.
Yacht Club Bregenz crosses the line, as does the Swedish team. And then the remaining two Austrian teams, Matsey and way back because of that disastrous mark turning, Akensee, who everyone had really high hopes for, having won their qualification in St. Moritz, and of course, being the defending Champions League title holders. Lots of pressure on Segel Club Matsey, and at the moment, the pressure is showing. So confirmation of the result there on the screen. Well done to the French team. And that victory takes the French up into 7th place overall, 10 points behind the leaders currently. But we ought to point out that for the French, that was their third successive victory in a row. So let's not dismiss them from the overall results.
No, he certainly found some form on the conditions. Very different to yesterday, much lighter conditions. And with the breeze and these waves, and as we talked about with the surfing opportunities for these boats downwind, and they're reveling in these conditions. And 3 race wins, you couldn't be doing anything better to climb your way back up the leaderboard, and that's exactly what they've got to do. Still a little way off from the top of the leaderboard, but still doing everything in the right direction. So again, as we're seeing now with this breeze and these waves and the opportunity to surf these boat speeds gradually, slowly starting to dial up. Quickest boat out on the water was the 2nd place, but with a greater distance sailed, it certainly was going to knock them back against the French team, Club Voile Saint-Quentin, taking that race win. Manoeuvres, again, we're seeing similar sorts of manoeuvres at the top end of the race. Porto Edgar Yacht Club, the only British boat, maximising the manoeuvres there with 13, but that was down to, again, a bit of a poor start, getting off that start line, multiple tacks, and also we saw numerous tacks go in upwind, positioning themselves in the right place to give them the opportunity of that 3rd place. But great to see these speeds coming up, similar manoeuvres across the fleet.
So some fascinating data coming off the water. Always good to number crunch at the end of these races and get the real story of what's happening. We'll be on board this boat, the Russian boat from Ostlegal Sailing, and we'll also be joining the Royal Danish Yacht Club on board for the next race in Flight 7, Race 2 of Flight 7, which gets underway in a few minutes' time. Race 2 of Flight 7 about to get underway in this Champions League final here in Porto Cervo in Italy, off the northeast coast of Sardinia. And we're on board boat number 4, the Royal Danish Yacht Club, the only all-female crew taking part out of the 32 crews here in the Champions League final. Henriette Koch at the helm, former London 2012 Olympian in the 470 class, and her 4 teammates, the only boat to also have 5 crew members.
That's right. It's so with the J70, it is down to a weighted class, and so most of the teams having 4 people on board, because it tends to be the 5th person tends to be a lot smaller if they're all fairly big guys, but here spread out across 5 talented young women sailors.
So who's on board which boat? Well, boat number 1, that's the blue-coloured boat, St. Petersburg Yacht Club of Russia. Boat number 2, that's got the red sail. That's got our second-placed team overall in the standings, Société Nautique de Genève of Switzerland. They've already made 3 victories this weekend. Can they add to that? And if they do, I think we'll need to do the maths, but I think it'll give them the lead overall. Boat number 3 with the yellow flags, the Circolo Canottieri Aniene of Italy, the second of 2 Italian teams competing in the Champions League final. And this team come up from Rome to compete here. Boat number 4 with the green sail. We've been on board with them already, the Royal Danish Yacht Club. Boat number 5, Ost Legal Sailing of Russia. They have the pink sail. You can just see it in the middle of the screen, the other side of the committee boat, the start line. Boat number 6 with the lilac sail, Verein Wannsee of Germany. So the German team from Wannsee Sailing Club in Berlin. Then comes boat number 7 with the grey sail, and Société de Regatta d'Antibes of France. They're running a fairly good campaign at the moment and currently sit 8th overall. And finally, boat number 8 with the light blue sail are from Finland, from Vasa Sail Club. So 1 minute and 15 seconds to go. You can see the start line. Let's see how this pre-start unfolds.
Well, with, again, the favouritism towards that port end side of the line, we will see teams all lined up and attacking that part of the start line. Again, it all comes down to time and distance. Can they judge it perfectly right? We've seen people get it wrong, and that's been very costly in the overall results. But all the boats will line up just behind the back of the committee boat, as you can see now, ready to accelerate towards that line. So as we look down at the fleet there, just over 35 seconds to go now. The breeze up to 14.5 knots, so up to some of the strongest breeze that we've got. Plenty for all the crews to do.
So the seconds counting down. We're on board with the Russians. Looking around, jostling for position. The yellow boat seems a little bit ahead with still 8 seconds to go. The yellow boat, the Italian boat, they had a terrible start last time. Can they get it right this time? Difficult to tell from this angle. They seem to be taking no risks this time. They bared away, but they're over the line now. And the fleet are away, and it looks like it's a clean start. So the first place has gone to boat number 3, Circolo Canottieri Aniene of Italy, followed by the Germans from Berlin with boat number 6. Then come the Russians, Ost Legal Sailing, with the pink boat, boat number 5. And we're on board with the Danes.
So a great start from the boats all attacking that. We held fire. Just see sort of on that committee boat that there was an unsurety of whether a flag was going to get raised. They were looking at each other, but an all-clear start, and here the Danish team working away from the fleet. So a good start out in front from the Italian team there with the yellow so far furthest from picture. going towards that left-hand favoured side. The breeze starting to clock slightly round towards that left as well, so just going to present even more favourability to head that way. They'll be taking this little bit of a header, and bang, there we go. The tack comes in now. They accelerate off from that left-hand side onto a good shift as that breeze sits in that left-hand side at 14.5 knots, creeping up to nearly 15 knots. So they've got a solid start there under their belts. A good position as they make their way up, halfway up this first leg.
A lot of experience on that Italian boat. The helm, 11 World Championship titles to his name across different disciplines, 8 European titles, 16 national titles. Lorenzo Bressani at the helm, and with him he has a crew of former Olympians and European champions, so plenty of experience there, whilst the Russians, who are trying to chase them down and are hot on their stern. Vladimir Lipavsky is an amateur helmsman, but he's got himself a professional crew, and arguably, I reckon, without actually putting it into Google Maps, I reckon they've come the furthest to be here. They've come all the way from Vladivostok in the easternmost part of Russia, and they are currently in second place and wanting to impress. But keep an eye out for Société Nautique de Genève, currently fighting it out for third or fourth place. The Swiss team are second overall, and they'll want to be as high up that fleet as possible when this race comes to an end. Halfway up the first leg of this second race of Flight 7, and it's the Italians who are in control.
Now we're seeing this breeze drop slightly lighter, still staying towards favouring that left-hand side, and this is exactly what we're seeing. Picture right here now with the Italian team. The yellow boat up in front sailed a great start away from that, and we'll see them approaching into the ley line. So they're
Royal Danish Yacht Club, the green boat, coming into second place as things stand. But the Italians are rounding the white buoy, and it looks like the boat directly behind them, following on that same track, is going to come in second place. The pink boat of the Russians. But what about third? Who's going to get there in third place? It looks like it's the Danish girls, followed by boat 6, the Berliners.
So on board here, you can see how frantic it is with that kite, trying to get that kite set. This is the Danish girls here. A lot of physical effort to get that kite up to the top of the mast, from a mast halyard being pulled out through the bottom of the mast. Clear set, good acceleration away. But it shows how costly, if that kite doesn't set straight away, you can get towed back into the boats behind you, and certainly it allows them to attack you straight away from that mark. 13 knots of breeze, so going into this, dropping down just a knot or two.
But look at the gap between the Italians and the Russians now. The Italians stretching their lead, although seemingly are they struggling here at the front of the fleet?
Well,
what's going on?
This is exactly what we saw earlier from another boat doing it again. Is doing this goose winging, which is where you've got the spinnaker over to one side of the boat, the mainsail over to the other, but it allows you to sail a lot lower angle. They have to make that call on whether they're doing that for a tactical position to get themselves in a better position to defend, but also it's tricky if the breeze has gone slightly lighter and they're unable to make the boat plane on these waves. It potentially is shortening the distance they need to sail.
The Italians were OCS in their previous race and will be very determined to show their mettle in this one and hold on to that first place. Back upwind they go for the final time. We're at the halfway point of this race, with the Italians a good 20-30 metres ahead of the second place Russians. We're on board the Danes as they round the mark in third place.
So looking at the overall leaderboard with Ust-Legal Sailing, who are up into second, and the Russian team there this will see them climb up the leaderboard. And again, all of the races completed. There are no discards, so every single race matters. We've done it in flights. You won't see completely exactly where they are on the overall leaderboard with the other boats still to race. But they are doing everything possible to climb up that leaderboard, and a great performance so far.
We're with the rear-enders here, the Regatte d'Antibes from the south of France and the Sail Club from Vasa in Finland. They've chosen the right side of the course, hoping for something different, I guess, in the conditions, something that will help them blast their way up the fleet. But the Italians remain in control. The Italians from the Yacht Club in Rome. It's their third Champions League competition. They are Italian champions, and they're looking for their first ever Champions League victory. But there's a long way to go. Still got plenty of racing this afternoon and all of tomorrow, and the conditions are looking good.
So a great position from the Italians there, just sitting over towards that left-hand side, which has been favourable, but not getting themselves far out towards that left-hand side, not getting themselves to the lay line, positioning themselves on that inner line and giving them the option to be able to tack back and come back and defend their position against the Russian team there, but also being able to make sure that as they come in on that lay line, if there has been any wind shift that favours their left-hand side, they're not sailing any added distance. So it'll be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised when we see the stats come up after the racing that the distance will be greatly shorter from the Italian boats, certainly from what we saw them doing downwind, as well as their positioning here on this upwind leg 3. There
have been no overtakings at all in the top half of the fleet. It's been 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way from the start. But where are the Swiss? Because they are currently in second place overall, just a point between them and the leaders. And they need good results to keep the pressure on the leaders as the Italian round that top mark and head towards the finish line. The Swiss, be interesting to see where they come in, because they're currently sitting in 6th place, and that will be very disappointing for them. In come the Russians. We're on board.
So as they're on board, you'll see now the helm bearing away. A crew go straight in for the Jenica hoist. 2 crew members, one onto the hoist, one straight onto the sheet. So the spinnaker set straight like that. Big set, pop. The power comes on and then accelerates away. Now on board with the Danish girls again. That extra chuck of the spinnaker out and away from that boom, because the added friction of pulling that kite up underneath that boom is just all it is going to zap power from the sailors as well as slow down that hoist. So really nice hoist from both boats with those cameras on board, and certainly extending that gap, and we're not going to see much going on. Again, just as it tracked out a picture there, or we got in that far left corner, the Italians are off doing it again. We're into that sort of goose swinging section, getting that kite round to one side, the boom onto the other side. So it's a complete different setup to the way these boats are sailing. So the difference there now, they've put in the jibe and what they were doing. So I think the reason why they're doing that is it is slightly slower, but by doing that you can see the distance that what they've done is put themselves in a position that they're able to defend. They're sailing a shorter distance and it allows them to be able to jibe and take this through to the finish.
Is that local knowledge, do you think? They've sailed these waters hundreds of times.
No, it's a technique that's used in multiple classes, and it's one that's talked about a lot, certainly within asymmetric classes, because the asymmetric boats require that power up and acceleration, but if they feel the breeze is light enough, that could be a benefit instead.
And so the Italians close in on that finish line. A really dominant performance, and Luca Bressani takes his crew across the line to bounce back from a poor race previously to victory this time. and they will be pleased on board. They will be celebrating, and they will be giving a big sigh of relief after some poor performances earlier on. In come the Russians in second place. Ostlegal Sailing cross that finish line, and right hot on their heels, two boats fighting it out for third place. Did it go to the Germans, or did the Danish women just hold on? I think they did. Confirmation coming shortly. Société de Regate d'Antibes crossing the finish line now. And then comes at last the Société de Nautique de Genève, the Swiss, who were hoping to keep the pressure on the leaders, and the overall leaders they will be very disappointed with that, and we'll see what that does to their overall position. That may well have cost them the Champions League title. We shall see. And then bringing up the rear, the team from Finland, from Vasa in Finland, coming in 8th place.
So really interesting how things are starting to pan out with every single race as it goes past. As we saw the Italians, in looking at their overall leaderboard, they've had a superb set of results, except that one race in the last race, which they attacked that start line too early, got an OCS. Otherwise, they had a clear slate of great results and would be in a very different situation. So fingers crossed that doesn't affect them later on.
And what we're seeing, that 6th place finish for the Swiss, is their worst result of the regatta so far. They were 5th yesterday, but other than that, they've always been in the top 3. So disappointment for the Swiss, but well done to our winners, the Italians from the Circolo Canottieri Agnene from Rome, who were really dominant to take that race, that second race of Flight 7. Okay, so that is race 2 of Flight 7, and we'll be back shortly for the concluding parts, the next two races of Flight 7. Not long to go to race 3 of flight 7. And we're on board boat number 5. Crewed by Lindau Sail Club of Germany. 4th in their national league last year to qualify for the Champions League. They then made it through St. Moritz to be here at the grand final in Porto Cervo here in Sardinia. And a minute or so to see who's crewing the other boats. Boat number 1, the dark blue boat, Yacht Club Scheveningen of the Netherlands. Lord of the Sail, they're back in action, the Russians. Boat number 2 with the red sails, Hellerup Sail Club of Denmark. Boat number 3 with a yellow topped sail. The Lithuanians are in boat number 4, GVK. Boat number 4 with a green sail. Boat number 6 with the lilac sail, Ekon Sail Club of Sweden. Then come the APCC Voile Sportif of France, the team from Nantes. They're on boat number 7 with the grey sail. And finally, boat number 8, Regatta Club Bodensee of Switzerland, the second of the Swiss teams that we've seen in action today. So a minute to go, and that jostling, that fighting for position is underway.
So as we enter with 1 minute to go, the course still set up very similar to before. That port end biased again. The teams know it, and that favouring that left-hand side, but we've seen how costly an error can be for misjudging that timing. 13.5, 14 knots again on this race course, a great breeze. You can see how much that swell, the chops picked up with this breeze, and throwing those boats around. And so getting clear off this line, keeping that pace on and driving, and the breeze moving round slightly towards that left-hand side as well. So all favouring these boats down towards this left side.
Now the French team, who had an excellent race earlier today, seem to be in a good position at the start of this with boat number 7. And over they go as the clock hits 0. Lord of the Sail of Russia with the red sail across the line first, and a clean start, we believe, for everyone there.
So no flag going up on that committee boat, so identifying that it was a clean start. A split here as the bulk of the fleet all wanting to get towards that left-hand side, not favouring the full left-hand side, but wanting to be there and get off towards that pin end. That's exactly what happened. Lord of Sail, they took that pin end boat. They are charging out towards that left-hand side. Breeze now flicking slightly towards the right, so favouring the boats. Heading out towards that right-hand side a little bit of a lift for those boats on starboard. But when they come back, if that breeze remains in that situation, they'll be fighting against it. So we'll see how that goes.
But we're on board the leaders, Lindau Sail Club of Germany. Veit Hemmerter at the helm of that pink boat. Lord of the Sail in second, and then the team from Nantes. They won their previous race, currently sitting in third. Hard one to call at the moment, though. All the boats in contention.
Interesting to how those helmsmen favour how they trim that mainsail with the use of the Traveller and letting that boom slide up and down all the main sheet. And interesting, just watching on board there, the movement that had gone more onto the main sheet, keeping the Traveller fitted where it is and just working at that main sheet a lot more, trying to open up that top part of the sail. So interesting to see the differences in the way people are sailing, certainly with the conditions out on the water in this chop. It's certainly about finding that perfect balance, keeping that rig working. You can see that top part of it just starting to fall away and depower that rig a little bit as the breeze comes up.
The boat on the far side of the picture, number 2, currently leading, but fighting it out with the boat closest to us, boat number 5 from Germany. and then come the French. Right behind the French are Regatta Club Bodensee and then the Dutch from Yacht Club Scheveningen. But 4th, 5th, 6th, those places are chopping and changing all the time. It's all still very close indeed as the Russians begin to slowly gain an advantage distance-wise on the Swiss.
So a big duck there from boat number 1 is the Dutch team dipping behind at the back there. So it was a late call on whether they made that tack underneath or to whether they took that duck, and that was a late call, which means that they had to do a lot harder turn, which will have slowed the momentum of the boat. And that is the boat closest to camera, but they certainly wanted to get over to this right and gain advantage. Now they come back with more of the advantage. But you can see not as clear cross after losing from that speed.
And once again, the top mark chosen by the umpires will be the white buoy that's just coming into shot. And Lord of the Sail are first there. Lord of the Sail from Yekaterinburg in the Ural Mountains. They're used to sailing on a small mountain lake. These conditions very different from their home conditions.
Interesting to watching their path of sail as they went round there. Literally looked like they were sailing to the wrong mark, and then at the last minute made a slight adjustment, bore off, accelerated the boat towards the top mark. So again, whether there was some confusion, but with the space they've got at the front of that fleet, very comfortable.
So the whole fleet are round, but it's the Russians in the lead. Evgeny Nogodinokov, and I think that's the last time I'm going to try that name, at the helm. And 3 changes to this crew from the crew that qualified in St. Petersburg. They had a pretty average performance out there, actually, and qualified by the skin of their teeth in 14th place. Only registered 2 victories in qualification. But right now, they're looking good, and they're extending their lead, although the French are fast downwind.
And this is it, these conditions providing plenty of option for the sailors to attack the waves, really utilise and maximise the speed. We saw the speed come on early on many of these boats, and as soon as you get onto a wave, the power of that boat charging you forward is much greater than the power of the wind. And so being able to get onto these waves and accelerate them, that's why you can see the teams working frantically behind Lord of the Sail as they come into this gate mark. The French and the Swiss are in a tight battle and just lost a shot of them as we go in round the gate mark. But neck and neck, are they going to choose the same mark? And the positioning is going to come down to who's going to stay out wider. Look at the speed coming in here.
That boat number 5 coming in, Lindauer Segel Club, so fast. And fast enough to have possibly taken second place. We shall see as the fleet reshuffles on the way upwind.
So a real balancing act for these sailors, trying to use that spinnaker and hit those waves to accelerate it. Exactly what happened there with the Germans that we're on board with now. But it got to a point where they accelerated so fast that they were unprepared for that mark, and they were still there trying to get that Jenica down. You can see that pink still flapping around in that front part of the camera. So again, a big game for them, but certainly put the pressure on their team, and again relies on good teamwork for them to come away with a good result from here. But a great attacking position there from the German team, which have moved up into 3rd place. This wind favouring that left-hand side again, just starting to drop down a little bit, down to 12 knots, so still a nice breeze. But those extra couple of knots will certainly enable these boats to really fly downwind. The positions favoured again on that left-hand side with the bulk of the fleet and the leaders there going into attack. Lord of the Sail from Russia in control of this race as they make their way up. Upwind for the final time, leg 3. And this is the tack that we've been waiting to see how they come across, is the German team. As they come back across.
The same crew that qualified in St. Moritz. They finished 7th after a season in which they complained that their form had been pretty poor. But things seemingly coming together. The three of these guys have sailed together since they were kids. They know each other extremely well, and that must help when you carry out fast manoeuvres like these. But the Russians, look at them, nicely in the lead, in control, boat number 2, right of the screen. Germans tacking backwards and forwards. It'll be interesting to look at the number of manoeuvres they've performed at the end of this race, and whether it's actually doing them any good or whether it's actually costing them distance. We shall see. Boat number 7 with the grey spinnaker. Or the grey sail, I should say, APCC Voile Sportive of France in 2nd place. The team from Nantes, they're used to the choppy, windy conditions of the Atlantic, and they've just watched the leaders from Russia round that mark. And a slow spinnaker launch there, I'd say. They took their time, they played it safe, but they are heading towards the finish line. So they've got nothing to, they've got everything to lose and nothing to gain by taking any sort of risks. Round go the French. Here come the Germans. 3rd place now.
Well, interesting tussle there with the Swiss on the inside. Here we are looking back on board camera how tight that was around that mark, whether a penalty will be put towards any of those boats. Very, very tight. And I was literally just about to say the Swiss team at Regatta Club at Bodensee were the only team to have made gains in this race. The first 2 boats have stayed 1st and 2nd throughout the whole race. They went from 5th to 3rd and slowly clawed their way up, were the only ones pushing the way up. But certainly after that manoeuvre at that windward mark, that has cost them dearly.
Bodensee currently hitting well below their weight. They've got a lot of experience on board that boat, although 3 new members. They seem to have made some big changes since they qualified in St. Petersburg. But let's not forget, Regatta Club Bodensee was 2nd in last year's Champions League.
And a jibe now coming in from the Germans there. We saw just tucking up behind at the back of Regatta Club Bodensee, trying to get away. No, they are into a penalty turn. It looked like they were going into a penalty turn from that incident, I'm sure, at the windward mark, where they tacked into position and it forced the position on Regatta Club Bodensee.
And that has cost them. That has cost them the race. They clawed their way back up to the podium places, but that has cost them any sort of decent finish. So the Germans we see drop down to 8th. But let's stick with the Russians in the lead pretty much from start to finish. They cross the finish line for yet another victory. Lord of the Sail. They were OCS in their previous race, but that is another victory they can add to their previous 2. So a good performance from them. And it looks like 2nd place is done and dusted as well. That'll go to the crew from Nantes on the French Atlantic coast. They take 2nd place.
And again, looking at Lord of the Sail with that last result in the last race, the OCS. Otherwise, podium positions all the way through and 1/4.
So the Danes from Hellerup Sail Club crossed the line in 3rd, and it's close for 4th, but it went to the Swedes. And then Bodensee crossed in 5th, with the Dutch in 6th. And can the Germans end not last? Doesn't look like it. Their penalty turn was just too much, and there was no coming back from that. So, confident, controlling, dominant victory for the Russians. from Yekaterinburg. They're the Russian champions, and they're showing their class with their third victory here in the Champions League final.
And again, let's just hope that one result doesn't come back to bite them. That one OCS were, again, a great start. If they were just sat a little bit further back, could have been it. But with plenty more racing still to go, and if they can hold that form throughout, certainly could see a greater deal.
Now, we were talking about all those tacks and manoeuvres by the German team. Unfortunately, we can't see them there, but it'd be interesting to see exactly how that race panned out. Let's talk about these. And
oh, there they are, just appeared at the bottom. A couple of those manoeuvres, or certainly one of them, will be that penalty turn that they undertook. But it certainly was a much greater. As you picked up, there were plenty of tacks that they were putting in, and seemed to be, it certainly highlighted the difference, even from those front three boats. 9, 8, 9 on manoeuvres, so all very similar. But look at the distance that Lord of the Sail actually sailed. I had a feeling that on that first leg, they were sailing to that red mark, and they overcooked it, and suddenly, because they still had the lead, they had to bear away and come back down towards that white first mark. And so some of those errors could be where that distance has crept in. But the boat speed, again, look, we're over 6.5 knots, and certainly from the Danish team there. They're doing a superb job. But again, we're seeing now the distances being sailed. Some of those will start to be increasing compared with the lighter breeze we saw in the earlier races, because boats will be sailing greater angles to get onto these waves and use the waves to power them downwind.
well, the crew swaps have happened, and they're now preparing for the final race of Flight 7, and we'll be on board with Frederikshavn Sail Club of Denmark. We're watching them right now. Chris Human at the helm, Rasmus Melson on the bow, Rasmus Damsgaard, tactician, and Søren Steen, the trimmer. We'll be following their race closely with our special onboard cameras, giving us that fascinating insight, really, into life on board and under pressure. Now, another team to keep an eye out for in this final race are the local team from the Costa Smeralda Yacht Club. They are our overall leaders currently. And because of a poor performance by the Swiss from Geneva, their lead is now a whopping 5-7 points. Me and maths have never been big friends. We're on board with the Polish team Yacht Club Sopot. That's our second boat, second onboard boat. Rafał Salvicki at the helm, Mariusz Klabuki and Damian Pietruszewski. Got there in the end. Doing the business on board. So we have got a 10-minute delay to this race, and they need to just do a little bit of swapping and chopping and changing on some of the other boats. We were explaining earlier in the day, if you've just joined us, we'll just explain it again, that there are obviously 8 J70 boats, and the 32 teams share the boats. So after every race, it's a pretty well-oiled machine, really. A rib comes alongside, everyone jumps off, the new team jumps on, and off they go. And the turnaround is usually quite quick, but there's obviously some issue which has caused us a 10-minute delay. So that's where we stand right now here in Porto Cervo. We're waiting for the final race of Flight 7, and we'll be back shortly with that. Welcome back. I'm Alec Wilkinson, Corky Road, sitting beside me doing all the data crunching on the SAP analytics coming off the water as we enjoy our first day of live action here in Porto, Cervo, the Champions League final. It's fascinating stuff. The overall leaderboard is really hotting up and we are about to enjoy the final race of Flight 7. On boat number 1, and that's not the boat that we're looking at. That is the Polish boat, Yacht Club Sopot. They are boat number 4 with the green sail. Boat number 1, dark blue sail, Nielanska Yacht Club from Finland. Boat number 2 has the red sail. They are the local boys and overall leaders, Yacht Club Costa Smeralda. Boat number 3 with the yellow sail is the Deutsche Touring Yacht Club from Germany. Boat number 5 with the pink sail, Frederikshavn Sail Club of Denmark. Cape Crow Yacht Club from Sweden. They finished last in their previous race that we brought you live. They are in boat number 6. They are on the lilac-coloured boat. Boat number 7, that's the grey one. That's the Royal Norwegian Yacht Club. And then boat number 8, Almere Central Yacht Club from the Netherlands. So there we have it, the setup for the final race of flight number 7. And the boat to really keep an eye out on is boat number 2 from Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, our current overall leaders. Every race yesterday, they won. Today, they've had a bit of a wobble. They finished 2nd and 6th. So has some inconsistency come into their performance? Well, I think it's probably a little bit too early to accuse them of that, but we shall see how they get on. They've got a 7-point lead in the overall leaderboard from Société Nautique de Genève at the moment. So 1 minute to go, and things hotting up.
Well, certainly with that, with 7 points available to them, obviously they're not wanting to throw that away. They'll be looking to take another race win and extend their lead. But only time will tell with just over 40 seconds to go. A pin end bias still. We've seen consistent this breeze favouring that left-hand side, the way the course is set up, with 12.5 knots up to 13 knots still on that race course. The breeze in a left-hand phase at the moment, so as they come off this port end of the line, they'll certainly be looking at it. The Polish team are jibing out there in the wrong position, too close to that end of the mark. You see them jibe out and try and reset themselves right down at the far end. Is your home club, boat number 2, and it looks like they have also got themselves too early. They've jibed around as well.
So, disastrous start for Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, starting near the back of the fleet, but that's always better than crossing early. And right at the moment, it looks like the Dutch on boat number 8 are currently leading. And then come the Finns on boat number 1. So all very close at the moment as the Italians do what they did last time and suddenly tack away and choose the opposite side of the course.
So coming away from that race, this shows that even on the start we see them lined up here right down towards the pin end, the furthest boat, and you can see they've not got the space to manoeuvre for the time that's still available, so they've jibed out but gone straight into race mode. By doing this, they won't have lost out a huge amount. They will have sailed up by jibing around and coming in on a reach like they are now. That breeze coming in, the speed will be up, and they will have been able to thread their way back through on the race course. So they will have lost out a little bit. They certainly won't be going towards that favoured side of the race course. And as they've gone across these boats, they have ducked every other boat on the fleet. And this is where we see them now, split away from the fleet and over towards this right-hand side, which is the unfavoured side of the course. But with good speed and plenty of this race to come and how bundled the rest of the boats are, they've still got plenty of attacking opportunity.
So we're watching there the cunning experience of an America's Cup helmsman in Flavio Fabini, who is in control of that local boat. 2 America's Cup campaigns behind him, the last one being in Valencia on Mascalzone Latino. But right now we're on board with the Danes from Frederikshavn Sail Club, Chris Human at the helm, Rasmus Melson on the bow, and sitting over the side there, Rasmus, Damsgaard and Søren Steen. And that shot we just caught, there we go, first, second, third, fourth. Those are the leaders of the fleet, with number 2 just coming into shot there, the local team here from Sardinia.
And with the breeze how it is, that's favouring just a boat right closest towards us, boat number 2, the local team. They are on the favoured lift, but along with everybody else. But because they cleared their breeze early from everybody else, got that little extension away from them, it is giving them plenty of opportunity. And when you're at an angle like that, and this is where the tack now comes in to come back towards the fleet, they're in a very strong position and will see themselves jump back up into this top few boats. They'll certainly clear the next 3 boats, and then it's going to get very tight as they come in towards that top end of the mark. Certainly, at the moment, the Dutch doing everything right coming in from that left-hand side.
Now the 3 crew sitting on the side there, the one to our left, furthest left, Branko Bricin. He's the Slovenian that they've recruited to the team. He's a member of the club. They've chosen him for his tactical nous. He's the J70 World Silver Medalist. He knows what he doesn't know about this boat. You could write on a postage stamp. So, top mark, first rounding, boat number 8 from Holland. Round that mark, followed by the Italians. Who's going to come in third? Round go the Finns. And then our Danish boat battling it out with the Germans from the Deutsche Touring Club. And the yellow sail, Maximilian Weiss at the helm, but we're on board with the Danes.
We're seeing here a flag in the hand of the crew member now hoisting the kite, the yellow and red flag that is hailing as a protest for the boat below them.
He's not flying it though.
Well, he just had to hold it up. No, he just held it up, made it official to the umpire. Now it is for the umpire to make the call. It doesn't have to, once it's gone up, and it doesn't have to stay up, it just has to be held. So it's been displayed, and this is where the penalty might come in.
Watch the yellow boat. They're the ones who will get the penalty if that is correct.
So we will see if a penalty is applied or whether they just happily believe that no penalty was broken and they wave them on. And again, we see time and time again on this left-hand side.
But it's always with the Italian boats, isn't it?
With the Italian boat going down towards the left-hand side. They've now put in that jibe, but keep an eye on this hometown boat. They were soaking down and sailing by the lee, goose-winging their sail round to give them this opportunity to attack right at the gate. And here they are next to the gate. So the Dutch hang on to first, but hot on their heels and so ever present.
No change to the top 3 on that downward leg. It's still the Dutch, followed by the Italians, followed by the Finns. Coming round in 4th, Deutsche Touring Yacht Club. I haven't seen any penalty turn from them, so maybe that was a penalty that was dismissed by the umpires. The Germans round that mark and go off on their own up this right side of the course. They'll be followed by the Poles from Sopot, helmed by Rafał Zelwicki, a 470 sailor and Polish sailing coach. And bringing up the rear right now, the Royal Norwegian Yacht Club. So, far side of the course are our leaders, the blue and the red sails. Can the Italians close that gap on the leaders? They certainly seem to be doing so at the moment. They're over halfway through this race.
Again, a strong tactic again, taking that early tack in underneath the ley line, not putting themselves exposed out to one side, giving them the option to be able to come back at that ley line if they need it, but also brings them back into the middle of the course. And as soon as you come into the middle of the course, you've got more options. You can attack the right, you can attack the left. If any shifts come in from either side, the opportunity can be taken. Speed's fairly similar between those front three boats. And we've seen that. There's not going to be anything radical between them, but we're certainly seeing it time and time again. It is the Italian boat that is soaking down low and pulling off that goose winging section with the kite for position, but also to try and narrow the distance they've got to sail. Coming into this final third of this upwind leg. Neck and neck.
Yeah, the distance between the leaders and second placed Italians has been fairly constant for much of this leg. What in the end will make the difference? Can the experience on board that Italian boat win through? They've got world champions, America's Cup helmsman, Melger's 24 champions. Will it all pay off now? They're round the mark. Dutch still ahead. Round they go. Spinnaker being prepared. Up it goes. And off they go. Downwind to the finish line. Now, what can the Italians do to close those few metres between them and the leaders?
So it's all about covering, trying to apply pressure to that lead boat, sailing a slightly higher angle, forcing them to sail a slightly higher angle and cover there, and make sure they're keeping their clean breeze. Or they can do another one where they've got the opportunity to soak down low, which looks like what they're trying to do. They're trying to sit on that inside line. What that does is it forces the lead boat and causes them unable to be able to jibe back into the group. They will be jibing onto port, which again will be onto the jibe where they have no rights. So you'll certainly be looking for the Italian team to accelerate down these waves and just try and get what we call an overlap between those boats and force them to not be able to jibe.
I was talking about the experience on the Italian boat. Well, the helmsman of that Dutch boat currently in the lead, 4 times world champion and match racing champion. So a huge amount of experience and the same age pretty much as Flavio Favini. John Den Engelsman is the helm, and he is staying calm and collected, and that's what he needs his crew to do as well now as they eat up the last few metres to the finish line.
So again, similar speeds across this for these boats. So we're not going to see any radical gains here, but we can now see a slight different tactic coming in from the Italians, saying a slightly higher line. But they have dropped back a few metres on this downwind leg, and it is going to be a fought battle all the way to that finish line.
Well, the Dutch are currently leaders of their national league. They won it last year. Huge amount of experience and success that can be boasted on board that boat as they approach the finish line and cross it as winners ahead of the Italians. The final race of Flight 7 has gone to Almere Central from the IJsselmeer Lake in the Netherlands. John Den Engelsman takes his boat across that line ahead of Flavio Favini's from the Yacht Club Costa Smeralda. Third place goes to the Finns. But look at that gap between third place and fourth. Those top 3 really split the fleet into 2. Over go the Danes from Frederikshavn Sail Club, followed closely by Cape Crow Yacht Club. Cape Crow Yacht Club, quite a young crew on board. They had some pretty inconsistent results in qualifying. They were hoping to have sorted those out by this Champions League final, but seemingly that is not to be, not yet anyway. Yacht Club Sopot from Poland also crossed the line now in 7th, and then the Royal Norwegian Yacht Club will be in 8th. But ultimately, that result, yes, they dropped a place, the Italians, but ultimately it makes very little difference to their dominance of the overall leaderboard, because they are still very much top. We'll confirm that leaderboard in a little while. But I wonder if we could have a look at some of the data off that race.
Well, so again, from those lead 2 boats, we saw how tight that racing was. They stayed in those positions all the way through, from the first mark through to the finish. And distances, well, look, there's 8 meters separate them, and that was nearly how it finished, pretty much. So the distances they've covered, the maneuvers and the similar speeds, so that showed what a dogfight it was between those 2 boats. A real battle. But again, that little bit less maneuver, a little bit greater speed from that finished boat. We saw them closing the gap on the Italians coming into the finish, and that has given them a solid 3rd position. But pretty different, and we can see, we're not sure exactly to why. Cape Crow Yacht Club there, the Swedish team, 10 manoeuvres and a greatly different sort of, the only boat there under 6 knots of boat speed, but could see why they dragged back and potentially why that gap appeared on that race course. As soon as a group get clustered together, it's very difficult to sail at a different speed from them, and so maybe that's where the cluster suddenly appeared from boat 5 down to 8.
So let's see at the end of our live coverage where the team stands, with Yacht Club Costa Smeralda, our overnight leaders, actually extending their lead to 5 points in this afternoon's races. Société Nautique de Genève, disastrous 6th place, but still holding on to 2nd. Ostlegal Sailing of Russia in 3rd. And then come the team from Saint-Quentin, close to Paris, with 22 points. And the other Italian team, another of the potential favourites here, Circolo Canottieri Agnene, currently sitting in 8th, with Almera Central, winners of that last race, in 7th place. Let's just have a look at the second page of this, because we have 32 teams, of course, and that's where they stand, with some really big name clubs in the middle of the fleet there, just like NRV, who are currently 14th. A wealth of experience on board that boat. They were winners in qualifying in St. Petersburg. Yes, they have changed the helm and one of the crew, so it's taken a while for them to bed in, especially in the first races yesterday with 2 8th place finishes. But I wonder where they will be at this time tomorrow at the end of racing. And at the bottom of the leaderboard, we have Ekholm Segel Club of Sweden. And in 32nd, the Lithuanians, with the Dutch just above them. So that concludes our live coverage of this first day of live Champions League action. We'll be back tomorrow at 12 o'clock, but in the meantime, Corky, there is a fantastic website for everyone to log on and go and have a look and drill down to the into the data of this racing.
Yeah, so it's all available to everybody at sapsailing.com. You can head over there, follow all of the events that SAP track and the analytics. But, of course, we are with the Sailing Champions League. So head over to sapsailing.com, click on the Sailing Champions League, and you'll be able to see all the data we're getting, the live leaderboard, as well as watch many of the races back.
Okay, so that's it from us for today. We're back midday local time, which is 10 a.m. GMT, 11 a.m. BST, and 12 o'clock midday Western European time. So wherever you're watching, hope you've enjoyed it. The racing continues here, and we'll bring you bang up to date when we come on air tomorrow at midday. So from us, it's goodbye for now.